to show you how to harvest and get and prepare herbs to dry them or freeze them, or there's lots of actual ways to preserve herbs for the winter coming up. Then you don't have to buy them. And we actually have planted herbs kind of interplanted with all of our other plants, and the bees are going crazy
sorry,
on them right now, so they're a little bit overgrown, and a lot of this will get torn out, like this pile here. But I just want to show you a couple of things, and then we're going to go in the house and I'm going to show you actually what I did and how I did it. So if you just come into the garden, I think we have about 4 different varieties of sage. And so literally you just come down, if you have a sage bush, and just cut a little bunch off. You don't need much. I cut like 4 of these, and that's what I'm going to dry. Otherwise, some of these actually are evergreen and live through the winter, and so I'm able to use them then. And then we just keep coming. This is all oregano. I cut a couple of sprigs of this, and this is another sage that's already bloomed. It's a different color, different variety. And over here, this is parsley, and it's actually completely bolted. I was gonna try to get a little bit, like down in the shadier parts, you can see that there's some parsley leaves left. And if you're really desperate, you could totally harvest those and use them. I'm just gonna let it reseed, and I'll have parsley either really late fall or early spring. And we just keep coming through. This is another type of oregano. I cut some of that. And then as we move into the shade, we actually grew a bunch of basil and a couple of things that really need to have a shadier environment so that they last longer. And this is a slow bolt basil, which this is obviously very late for basil usually. It is just starting to flower, but there's no reason you can't just pinch that off and just keep this growing, because again, it's pretty much 100% shade here. And all the flowers do is they obviously take resources, and so the plant will get a little bit tough or bitter. But if you keep those flowers off, it'll last, a few more weeks. But I did cut some of these. I'm gonna dry these. I cut some of the chervil. Down low, it's still good. It's obviously started to die and brown a little bit and flower. The cilantro has completely bolted. There's really not much of that left. But otherwise, we're gonna go into the house, and I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna process that just for fresh herbs for the winter. So follow me. Oh, also I did cut some rosemary. That pot over there has a large rosemary in it. So I cut a couple of sprigs of that as well, and some culinary thyme right below it. Come on in. It's much cooler in here. I think it's supposed to be 105 today. So we're doing a video, Tristan. So anyway, this is all of the sprigs that I cut outside that I just showed you. This is the sage. I cut some mint. This is oregano. This is a Thai basil. So it's a little bit finer, and it actually almost lasts the entire summer. It doesn't bolt until probably August. This is culinary thyme. This is the basil that I showed you where I pinched the flowers off of it. This is a chartreuse basil, or excuse me, oregano. This is the chervil, rosemary, and then I also cut some chives. Usually these, you just chop them up and use them fresh, but sometimes you really do want them in the winter on your baked potato or something like that, or in a recipe, and you can reconstitute it pretty easily in something that you're baking or stir frying. So what I like to do, and there's some reasons for it, I use bread twist ties. So I save them in my drawer, for all different reasons. But the reason I really like the bread twist ties over twine or thread is that you can twist it as tight as it will go, because sometimes as things start drying, they get smaller, and it shrinks, and then it'll fall out of your twine, and then you kind of have a mess. So with these, I can pinch it extremely tight. And also, how I dry mine, I make a little hook on it like that, and I'm going to show you why. So basically, I did cut a piece of twine that's going to go under my cabinet. Now you can dry herbs really anywhere that's cool, and preferably darker, not in direct sunlight, so that it keeps some of its green. If you dry it in direct sunlight, they turn white, and lose most of their flavor. So a closet would work, your laundry room, anywhere that isn't in a direct light situation. But where I'm gonna dry these is in my kitchen. So I have some tape that's safe to put on my woodwork. Like duct tape would definitely not be a good idea, but this is strong enough to hold up this. And I put a small knot at the end of each piece of twine so that as it takes the weight of the herbs, it won't pull through right there. And I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to put it back a little bit so it's not bothering anyone. I'm going to take that right up underneath here. And what I'm basically doing is I'm making a little clothesline, a little drying line for these herbs. Now that is where this little hook comes in. So because it has metal in it, I'm able to make it like that. And I can literally just slide it up there and pinch that over. And what that does then is it keeps these from getting dusty. They're in the kitchen, which is usually the cleanest room. And so, but they're out of the way of the counter. They're not gonna bother anyone up there. And I can put them all up here. Make sure and give them some space. That's the other advantage of this little hook, is you can slide them back and forth. If you wrapped these in twine or thread, you'd have to try to tie them onto something, which, you know, obviously anything's possible, but this is just what I like. Now, if you notice, it's starting to droop a little bit. So again, what I'm gonna do, because I have that little knot, is that as soon as I have these up, I can pull on it and put a second piece of tape and tighten it up a little bit so it doesn't just completely droop down onto the counter. And I'm just gonna keep putting these under here, and it's kind of pretty, isn't it?
Okay.
And they smell amazing. Completely amazing. So now another option for drying herbs, or not drying herbs, but preserving herbs, is freezing them. So you could either just chop these up with a cutting board and put them literally in a baggie and throw them in the freezer. And they will be ready to go. They'll stay green, they'll have lots of flavor. If it is just like a regular sandwich bag, make sure and double bag that, because those aren't freezer bags and they will get freezer burn. Another method I've seen that I've used is you can chop them up again and put them in ice cube trays and pour in oil, like olive oil or coconut oil, any kind of oil, and then as soon as they're frozen, you pop those out, put those in a baggie, mark them, make sure and label them, and then when you're going to stir fry or you're going to make something that requires that herb, literally just take out that herb oil ice cube, so to speak, and put it in your pan or let it thaw out and put it into your recipe, and they taste super fresh that way. So that's probably my preference, but you're not always putting oil in something, so sometimes you do want that dried herb or you want the frozen herb. And so once these dry, then what happens is once they're completely dry, you use jars. And I've saved like all the little funny jars maybe you get with like Christmas type jams or, you know, something like that. And you crumble them up, you know, into there, take the stalks out, take out, you know, anything that maybe was stuck in there, like little, you know, fuzzies from your yard, seed pods, that kind of thing. Put them in your jar, put a tight lid on them, and then make sure and put a label in there. So this is actually Monarda, which I didn't show you out in the garden, but it's also called bergamot. And you just kind of crunch it up. I don't crunch mine really, really small because every recipe calls for something different. Once you decide what you're making or what the purpose of it is, then you can, you know, put it in some pestle and really grind it up. But this is chamomile. Sorry, my phone is going. Woohoo! Now will that person just call right back?
Pardon me. I do not know.
And burst in on the video. Gee, live TV. Anyway, so this is chamomile. So we dried this actually last year, right? And it still looks really beautiful. And so this is for tea or to put, you know, like garnish something with it. But make sure your lids are tight. This is lemon balm. That's another thing we grow out in the yard. Now this is crunched up really fine, and lemon balm has, you know, its purposes for sure. These are, I always say I'm wrong. I want to say campanula, but it's
calendula.
calendula. And this, I mean, we put this in balms. It's also just really pretty. It has all sorts of different uses, and you make tea with it. It's kind of anti-inflammatory. These are rosebuds, which smell amazing, and they're just cute little pink rosebuds. This is a giant thing of now I've just like lost all of the chamomile, but it's obviously, see the differences. This one's quite a bit older, and so it's lost its pretty color. The petals have all just become part of the mix. So this one's probably old at this point. I haven't opened it up and smelled it. But once you get good at drying things, then you can make combinations. So this is like a tea mixture, and it has all sorts of really awesome little things. And it has rose petals, it has mint, it has lemon balm, it has chamomile. I'm trying to look at everything. It looks like it might have scented geranium, and it's a super tasty tea. It's just like kind of like I go right before you go to bed kind of tea.
Did you make it?
Yes, this one's we made. This is dandelion root. So once you really get into drying things, this is the root of dandelions, which is also like cleans out your liver, and so you'd have to make that in some kind of an infusion. This is scented geranium, which still smells good, so that's awesome. This one is wormwood and stinging nettle. So this is a weed for most people, but it does have really great properties, and so you can dry it and put a label on it, and you never know when you might need something like that. So as far as like drying and preserving herbs and things in your garden, I mean, YouTube is full of information. We are always available to send us a message like, should I do this? Shouldn't I do that? And it's just a fun experiment. Like, even if you're really not into it, even if you just have a patio garden and you're like, wow, I really loved my basil. What do I do? It's bolting. Cut it off and dry it. Freeze it. Do something with it. Don't just let it die, because you grew it. It's yours, and you'll enjoy it. That when you make some Italian meal mid-January, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I grew this basil. And it'll be better, just better, because you grew it. You can also dry tomatoes, and we've done them. We have a dehydrator now, but we used to just do them in the oven. And there's lots of recipes for that, where you slice them really thin, put them in the oven, let them basically just dry out. I think it took like 30 hours or something, but it was totally worth it, because when you eat sun-dried tomatoes that you did yourself, it's like so much different, so much more tasty and really good. So what else can you dry? I mean, you could dry everything, but
yeah. What is your favorite currently? Favorite herb that you've been experimenting with? You make tea all the time.
Yeah, I think it's probably tea. I do have this is my latest crazy concoction, which is chai, which none of this stuff can you grow, I don't think.
Well, annually you could grow it, but
could you? But it's a chai mixture where it's cardamom pods and ginger and cinnamon sticks and cloves and black pepper and black tea. What else is in it? Oh my gosh, it smells so good. What else is in it? Clove, I guess that's all of it. That's everything. But it's super good, and I love making that because when the pandemic hit, I couldn't buy it anymore, and so it forced me to go, oh, that is totally something I can make. And so
you just bought the individual
ingredients. I had to order some of them, obviously, because all the stores stopped selling bulk of everything, it seemed. And so I did have to order quite a bit of stuff from like mountain rose herbs and
do you have any tips for knowing when your herbs are stale or
definitely
should be thrown out or
so they do
start over?
Yeah, they do have a shelf life as far as like optimum flavor, optimum scent, and obviously you open the jar, and if it doesn't smell like something, if it just literally smells like musty or dusty, it's done. Like, I mean, you could use it, but it would be really hard. There are herbs though that you can bloom in a pan where maybe they're really old, like cardamom, because how many people have used their whole jar of cardamom in their life? Very few. So then you put that in a skillet with nothing in it, just dry skillet, and heat it up, and it blooms and opens the pores back up of the dried herb, and then definitely get all that flavor back. So those are lots of options. So we thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.